No, I did not buy an airboat. So, as you see, we got a project. Welcome to the Florida homestead, by the way. It's a beautiful day, Saturday morning, like probably 70 degrees already. It's gonna be like 90 today. But we got a friend's airboat that had a freak incident. All we can think is that one of the plugs came out somehow and it took on some water, and he was in a very slow idle turning, and it went over, and the small block Chevy went underwater. So our project today is to see if we can clean it up, clean it out, and get it running. What we've done so far is we drained the oil, took the filter off, let all the water out of the engine. The water is actually up over the dipstick. It was running out the dipstick. And pulled all the spark plugs out. We filled the engine up full of fresh oil, and we've bumped the starter a couple times to get the bulk of the water out of it. So now what we got to do is get the carburetor off in it and clean that out. The fuel tank is going to be an issue. We're probably just going to bypass that for this experiment and get it running. If it runs, we're going to run it for about 5 minutes, change oil again, and then we're going to run it for about 20 minutes and change oil again, just to get all the water out of it. Actually, Sue's got the hard job. I got to get the motor running. She's cleaning all the swamp out of it. When they rolled it back up, it set down on the bottom on its side in about 5 feet of water, and when they rolled it back up, it just scooped right full of the bottom of the canal. And yeah, it was kind of an interesting adventure. Maybe we'll put a little video of the rollover right here. And we got to see a lot of little baby gators. Maybe we'll put a picture of one here. But yeah, so I'm gonna climb up there and I'm gonna peel that carburetor off. Sue's gonna keep cleaning the little sludge, and you come around here. I actually got the plugs out. They look pretty good except for this one, and I don't think that's related to going underwater, because it went underwater at idle. I think that plug is fouling from some other reason. We're not going to worry about that. What our plan is to put those plugs back in to get it running, and then we'll probably recommend that he buys another set of plugs, and we'll change them before he leaves. We did get a new distributor cap and rotor, and we got a bunch of cheap oil, a bunch of cheap filters just for this. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull this apart, let the coil dry out. Maybe you guys want to see what's inside a GM distributor cap. So this is the small block Chevy 70s, 80s vintage, the HEI ignition. They have the coil inside the cap. You got your pin that your rotor runs on, and you see everything's covered in oil. This was literally upside down in the water, so the engine oil ran down through the distributor. So we're going to salvage the coil out of this. And all you purists out there, I know that you're supposed to put top dead cylinder, number one piston on top dead center, and then you put your distributor in correct. I know where it was. This was number one. They had marked it. I marked the coil cap. So when I get this apart, I can put that back together correctly, and I don't have to worry about where number one was. But I don't know if I can get this screw out.
So over here we have this situation, and I've already done probably an hour and a half worth of cleaning and baling mud. You can see it's all the way up here in that channel. It was actually all the way up to the very front of the boat up in here, and all the way to the back full when I started this. So been bailing out a whole lot of swamp mud. You can see up in the cage here, you've got all the debris remnants, because in Florida your channels are filled with a lot of vegetation. So it was a little bit of a mess, but we're making steady improvements on it.
So this is your ignition coil. So it sets right in the top. Everything connects in here. It's a single wire hookup, really. Sometimes you have more than one wire, but it really just needs ground and power to fire the coil. So we take that out, and we're going to take the screws out of it, set them back here out of our way. What I want to do, I want to wash this off real good just so it doesn't short with the bog water in it. This stuff here all comes with the new coil, so we're going to set that back there in our trash pile. And you do have to retrieve this ground, so that goes in the cap down there to ground the coil. So that's pretty much it with the distributor cap for the small block GM. The one thing I'll tell you is that they usually make a decent cap for like 30-ish bucks that has the brass and the brass inside, and they make a cheap one for like 20 bucks that has aluminum. And the aluminum on these GMs, in my experience, tends to corrode up really quickly. Like if you're running any kind of mileage in the old GM vehicles, my experience with the aluminum caps is you get like 6 months out of them, they start running a little poor. The brass ones last a long time. You get in there with a knife and scrape them off and clean them up. Well, we get the carburetor off. So my plan on this, these Hollies have a level indicator hole. You take these screws out with the pump running, fuel should just trickle out these holes when the bowls are full. It wasn't under, well, it was under for a couple hours, but it's been a very short period of time since it went under. So I'm just going to really hose this down well. I'm going to take those out. I'm going to drain it. I'm going to fill it up with gas, drain it a couple times into a drain pan, and I think that's going to be just fine. It ran great before the event, and it smells like gas coming out the bowls, so I'm pretty confident I don't have to really get into a rebuild on it, but if I do, I'll bring you back. So as you saw, fired right up. A little bit of water, a little bit of smoke, but pretty minimal smoke actually. We ran it for about 5 minutes, changed the oil, looked like a milkshake coming out. We ran it for another probably 10 or 15 minutes, changed the oil, and that time we got a little bit of milkshake, but mostly just good clean oil. So now we're on our third oil change, but that 15 minutes was actually going to be like 25, and it quit running. So we lost fire. We're pretty sure it's the ignition module. These GM distributors have 3 parts. They take 12 volts in, that's it. And there's a pickup coil that tells the module when to fire. There's an ignition module that does the work and then sends the pulse to the actual coil, and then the coil makes the fire. So typical failure in these GMs is that ignition module. And being that it was underwater for 3 hours, 4 hours, we feel like that's probably the most likely cause. So the owner of the boat's picking up another ignition module. We'll get that running, but yeah, for the most part, Sue's got the mud cleaned out of it. I think there was about 5 wheelbarrow loads of mud. So the canal this went down in was probably, well, about this deep. I remember standing in it, but the bottom probably foot was pretty soft, sludgy, stuff. And when it sat on its side, I think when we rolled it over, we scooped up, half a boatload of stuff. So it was pretty much full, at an angle. And Sue cleaned that out, had it cleaned up pretty decent. Boat owner will do a pressure washing and everything on it. But yeah, I think what we found so far is the ignition module, and it looks like the tachometer might have suffered. The tachometer is in the control box up here, and that was of course underwater. Looks like that might have suffered some ill effect, but we'll see. Other than that, the engine seems fine, runs great. You guys saw me mucking with the carburetor, no issues there. I did put a new cap and rotor on it because the old one was corroded. And yeah, we'll go from there. So that's kind of it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed some of this. This is kind of some of the things we putz on when we get the chance. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.